Every time I speak with Andrew, it lifts up my spirits. And I have a feeling it'll do the same for you. Andrew Alli uses Power BI to help faith-based nonprofits. He helps them use their data and reporting to manage costs, increase donations, and re-engage their audience. You will hear Andrew talk about why being an Excel hero is actually a bad thing. Why it's critical for us to make reporting accessible and easy to understand for everyone, not just a select few. He speaks of the challenges he deals with in the nonprofit world, like financial regulations, multiple entities spread all over the world, and more. And how Power BI lets him help his clients overcome those challenges. Now, you will also hear about Andrew's personal journey, how he worked in different sectors but felt pulled to work with faith-based nonprofits, the fears that held him back, and how he overcame them to create a joyful life aligned with his values and goals. So make sure to listen to the end, and I'll come back after the interview to share my biggest aha moment from our conversation. Andrew Alli is based out of UK, where he runs Care Financial. That's Care with a K, which helps faith-based nonprofits all over the world. You can find Andrew on LinkedIn or his website. We'll include both the links in the show notes below. Let's hear from Andrew. Welcome to the Power On Show, where we talk Power BI and beyond, sometimes way beyond. But our goal is always to help you create a successful Power BI career and a life of freedom. I'm your host, Avi Singh. Hey, Andrew, let's dive in and tell us about the industry you serve through your company, Care Financial Management.
So I help based nonprofits obviously re-engage and impact their communities by being able to unlock the insights that is hidden within their data sets that helps them grow their revenue as well as managing their costs, obviously using Power BI. So that's the niche I really work with is really nonprofits.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How long have you worked with this specific niche, faith-based nonprofits?
So I have worked with this niche for the last on and off for the last 10 to 15 years. Now the work I do with them is obviously as an accountant, I review their books, I prepare their year-end accounts, I advise them on how to be on the right side with charity commission regulation. I give them quite a bit of advice and prepare management reports for them. So yeah, I have been in this industry for quite a while. I made that decision to be in this industry, despite all the bits that have been coming down my way. It was a deliberate decision to be in this niche, and I really love it. I'm loving every bit of it, and it's been a journey in terms of being able to use Power BI to help my nonprofit clients solve some of their problems. It did not come overnight. It came out of necessity.
Yeah, as it often does. Does. Yeah. Tell us about that. Tell us. Tell us. Tell us. Let's dive into the whole journey. Tell us how you. What was that necessity that started you there, and how have you found since then? Like how you leverage Power BI in the way you serve.
So obviously reviewing part of my work with charities, obviously reviewing their books, so their bookkeeping, ensuring that they've got proper records kept, also advising and preparing the year-end accounts, and so this piece of work that I've been doing with them sort of gave me a front row seat into the complex data issues they're having.
Yeah.
Time and time again, the weakest link has always been around data, around not understanding data, not being able to see data, and obviously impacting their ability to make decisions.
Yeah.
So I've stepped in to try and help. as I can. So I usually, obviously, my to go to is usually Excel, or give me some Excel, and let's bring that data together. Let's see the donor list. Let's get the contacts in. Let's do some some VLOOKUP, some
Yeah.
index match, a bit of a
Yep.
little bit of
All too
macro in there on the
familiar.
side. Do you know what it is when you do, you just feel like a bit of a hero, oh, I've done this heroic effort, but it's heroic effort
Oh,
after heroic effort after heroic effort. And it
and
comes a point where
oh,
actually there must be something out there that could, without having to get sold this business intelligence tool that costs a fortune. Because remember, these are charities, they just need something quite simple.
oh
So
man, I'm cracking up here because it's funny because it's so true. And the funny part is that I had gone through the exact same journey where, so of course there's the stage that they talk about, right? Where somebody is problem unaware. And I was definitely that. I didn't know that I had a problem. I thought I was doing great. I was cranking this stuff in Excel. And yeah, you're right. You do feel like a hero. But at some point, most people start to kind of question it, right? Anyway, they say, man, is there all there is to it? Is there a better way? Could there be a better way? And that's, of course, where at least you're problem aware, and that's a good step. That's a good step. So I definitely remember that, where starting to question, it's like, yeah, I've been cranking this Excel thing for a while, and God, it's just gets tiring. So great. So did that at that point, like what? Yeah, how did you actually stumble into Power BI?
and so yeah, so I so obviously I kept looking at, oh, what's there, what's out there. Then I came across, believe it or not, I came across your book.
Love it, love it.
Because what I was looking for, I was just looking for, there must be something out there. And obviously I was doing a bit of it. I initially looked at, something came across around Power BI. And when you look at the Power BI from Microsoft, it doesn't really tell you
Yeah,
much. And so in the end, I did some good, and I came across your book, and I actually bought your book, and I
right.
kind of, I read the first couple of chapters, and I think I was like, "Whoa, this can
Yeah,
solve my immediate problems."
yeah.
The amazing thing
Yeah.
about it was,
Mhm.
obviously, it gave you some tools to say, "Look, you don't have to wait a month. You don't have to wait. If you get the time to read within a couple of days." Because
Yeah,
I read the first page, and you know, I just couldn't leave it. And as I was doing it, I kept on trying, and
love
wow,
it.
okay, this looked like magic. And that was just a little bit. Um, and so yeah, I was like, well, I was sold on it.
Oh, great. I love that. And thanks for sharing. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. So I think those are the two things. Well, the one thing is that people need you to watch out for, well, what we are all aware is that the Excel hero, right, which gets tired at one point, is looking for more solution. Well, one challenge is that us Excel heroes have seen our fair share of shiny objects in a career, right? I mean, how many times have I seen a tool which promised everything, or promised nirvana, right? And be sold on that, and then have it not deliver over and over and over again. So it's not a surprise that I had the same reaction when you kind of look at Power BI, look at this thing, you kind of question it, like, really is it going to solve everything? Yeah, sure, I've heard that one before. But again, I mean, it's kind of a hard one. That you need that opening where you just dive in a little bit and your mind gets blown and you start seeing the possibilities, and you can't have enough. But sometimes there is a transition. So I'm glad my book kind of helped you with that. So great. So tell us about the rest of the journey, and especially about the part that, hey, how have you now found that Power BI really lets you serve your customers in a different way?
So I think, so I got them. Obviously, your book took me to the first step, and obviously, and I think how it's actually helped is, obviously, as I say, I've been on the front row seat, obviously, with data issues with the charities I've been working with. And and I started out like, obviously just a simple solution for some clients, and also I've worked with some boards where members of the boards are not financial. They're not, they're just non-finance people. And I think the power of Power BI is being, rather than being given lots and lots and lots of numbers, you can take a large data set and with the right modeling, present a great visual that gives I can see what's going on here.
Exactly. Oh, that is so beautiful.
What happened in June?
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? Oh, and some people, when they say, "Oh, I know what happened in June." What happened in June? We went away on the summer, so we couldn't do X, Y, Z. So this is why this happened. And they get excited, they get animated.
Lovely. Oh, there's so much goodness in there. So, and I'll pick on the last part first, which is you said they get excited. And I think we forget that, this stuff can be exciting. And you know what should be exciting? Running a business, I can say as a small business owner, man, I mean, it's definitely exciting, but sometimes it gets beaten out of us because it's the same boring meeting, same stuff and same slides and PDFs and whatnot. So yeah, so this can be exciting. And of course, what you said that they say, I see. And I remember reading in the one of my favorite books, Stephen Few's Information Dashboard Design, and he points it out. He said, think about when people say, I see. What they're really saying is that, oh, I understand. But think about the phrasing, and it's important. The phrasing that they use is, I see. We say, I see when we're trying to communicate, we understand. Because, picture says 1,000 words. I mean, most of it are visual, and you put a picture in front of me and we can then understand, we see, and of course, make that interactive as Power BI does. And that just goes boom. So
absolutely. Great. And I think it's obviously, just so what you've literally done is, because every charity, you need a diverse board, you need people with different experiences and skills and perspective on life to be able to shape, the future, the strategy, the direction. Now, getting them involved and being engaged, because they can actually understand the activities, the drivers of their income, the drivers of their costs, helps them to shape things and actually make decisions that drive the charity forward. And that's a really big win. Because in private, you speak to some of them, they're like,
oh man, wow, Andrew, man, you're dropping like knowledge bombshells here. So two things here, kind of diversity and the private conversation. So let's talk about the second one again first. And I remember watching a Simon Sinek video where he's talking about be the idiot in the room, where he's saying he's sitting in a boardroom and this consultant comes in and starts doing a presentation in front of the board. And, and Simon raises his hands and says, I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're saying. I think you're saying is this, but it can't be true. And the consultant kind of tries to give him, kind of admonish him like, oh God, Simon, right? But he's persistent. And then one by one, other board members start speaking up. It's like, yeah, this does not make sense. So yeah, I mean, boy, I mean, and I think it happens in the smartest of rooms. So that's a real thing, cannot be ignored. And what you're talking about, diversity, which is, aren't we ready for the age where we democratize data, right? I mean, it should not be for an elite few. We should not be for whatever the nerds or the geeks. No, it should be for everybody because it can help everybody. So I think it's really important to have the ability to deliver, engage, excite all the board members, and of course the rest of the organization in turn, right? So man, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that, Avi. I think some people kind of make that mistake about, oh well, we'll just give them the ability, we won't give them everything, we'll just hold back and show them a little bit and make them come back to us. But actually, there's power in sharing, there's power in actually upskilling and delivering. Let them come to you with the big problems, get them up to speed, share, share. You grow when you share.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, I'm imagining this on the nonprofit side. I mean,
sure, you're serving the board of directors, but of course with Power BI, there's a capability to have this, kind of a chain of reporting. So of course the board of directors will look at a different report than maybe the frontline workers who are doing, kind of fundraising and all that sort of stuff, or taking care of the donors. But when you can see how you're performing and how that fits into the bigger picture, man, that is like beyond phenomenal. Frankly, I mean, 15 plus years of working in corporate America, that was one of my biggest struggles. I had no idea where I fit in, right? I mean, you feel like cog in the machine. And of course, in a way, everybody is energized, engaged, and they understand the big picture. That's far more important in a way for nonprofits, because they're serving this higher mission, this bigger purpose. Love it. So let's talk about nonprofits. Let's talk about your niche. And of course, we've had this discussion many times, and I've felt like I'm better educated than before. And I kind of came in and I had this line like nonprofits are businesses too. And yes, they are in a sense, but they're also unique. So tell me a bit about that. Now, what I've learned from you is I've learned about these sides, that the way the funding works. Of course, donation is a big aspect. And there is maybe more scrutiny on managing costs. And there's, of course, the community piece. But tell me how you see this business. Yeah, how you see this niche, these companies you work with, nonprofits, and what makes them unique.
I think it's, for me, it's, I think because of my background and my experience, when I engage with nonprofits, I usually come from the view of financial risks and managing risks. And so I think for me, it's a two-step approach. The first one is actually getting everybody excited about understanding where things are, what the numbers are saying, a single version of the truth.
Yeah.
The second thing is that it's a very understanding the environment they're in. So as you say, with regards to donations, some of their money comes from donations, legacies, and all that. And these aren't constant. Things could change. I mean, you could see with COVID-19 and all that. So I think it's the ability for the board, the trustees, and the management to be able to take a step back and say, okay, this is our data. This is how much we know is coming in from donations, from legacies. What about, as a scenario, we lose 50% of our income, or 60, or let's say 70% of our income over the next quarter?
Yeah.
What do we do? What do we, what sorts of policies, what do we have in place to be able to buffer that? And what would we do if our finances don't come back on track? It's not going to happen. It hasn't happened, but being able to think in that way means that you can then have plans in place to make sure, oh, hang on a minute, we can have almost like, scenario plan one. And this is where Power BI really helps out with, because you can see your numbers, you can see your forecasts, you can see your budgets and all that. But okay, let's do a scenario and see, what about if I lose 50% of my income? What happens? Okay, if I lose it in the next 2-3 quarters, what happens to our cash flow? Could we still survive? Could we still deliver? And if we can't, what can we do to mitigate those risks? So it's more about managing their existential, the ability to still be a going concern and still be a charity.
Wow.
So my bias around working with charities has always been about that. So there's the getting everybody to understand the numbers and be comfortable with where things are, but taking it a step further to understand what happens. What if? Is that what ifs? Managing your what ifs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's real powerful. And not just the downsides of your risks, but also the upsides, the opportunities. Because I know as a charity I've sort of been working with, and with the COVID-19, with the thing that happened with Afghanistan, they did this fundraising thing, and they got lots of money to support some of the refugees that are coming in. Because I think we in the UK, we got some of the refugees from Afghanistan, so they'll get some money in to support them, to help them settle in the United Kingdom and all that sort of. So they received huge outpouring. And it's so it's also managing that upside. How can they get that, when they get those funding in, how can they have the infrastructure in place to be able to deliver that? So it's not just the downside risk, it's also the upside risk.
Love it. And it almost seems like it's two sides of the same coin. Like, I'm willing to bet that an organization which is not prepared for the downside, which has never thought about it, whatever, just never considered it, just never came up, or they were afraid of considering it, right? It was like, oh, let's not talk about that. So whatever that reason was, if they never considered, never planned for it, never ran a scenario, then they probably wouldn't have done it for the other as well, which is like, oh, what if our donations doubled? And so equally, they're pretty much unprepared. And yeah, I think the COVID-19 has been a reminder to everybody. Now, of course, we have dealt with crises before, the financial meltdown, the mortgage crisis, and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know, maybe it was another Simon Sinek talk or somewhere, where they pointed out, which is so obvious, but for me, it was stunning, which they said, if you look at every one of these crises, at least the newer ones, they all seem to come from a new vector, a new direction. And I think that's the kind of world that we're living in now. Things are so dynamic, and we're pushing the envelope in so many ways, right? That we don't know in which direction vector the next crisis is going to come from. And I'll admit that, hey, as a small business owner, I can't say that I've done risk planning, but I can see the value in that. And I can see, again, how that can prepare you not just for the downside, but for the upside as well. Terrific. Love that. So let's talk about one other piece, which I've heard you mention, and I love that. So there's a lot of focus on, how they're running, how they're reporting, how the board of directors is seeing. But you said something very interesting, and you said that, again, the COVID scenario where, yeah, some organizations, there was an outpouring of donations. For some, the donations kind of dried up. So yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag. But you said that the one thing consistent was that donors are demanding greater transparency in how the funds are being used. So talk about that side. I mean, yeah, what's the scope and opportunity there for nonprofits to do that more effectively with their donors, and maybe do that in new ways which were previously unimaginable?
I think there's one of the key things is the shift in demographics around the folks that are supporting charity. So you've got younger generations, obviously in their 20s and their 30s, and they're in the digital age. So you've got the folks that have been supporting charities all their lives. They just give, and they get the odd letter here and there. Now that generation, they're still giving, but the demographics are changing. So you've got the folks in their 20s and their 30s who are very idealistic about what they support and the things that really hold dear to them, and they're really quite so for them to give, they want that information to understand how that charity is impacting lives. They want to feel part of the charity. They want to feel they want to have that engagement with the charity. And I think it's it's how what I found is that there's some very small, some charities that started small, and then obviously as it started growing, they've kind of missed out on trying to engage with their donors, and they don't understand why somebody who was giving and suddenly just stopped giving. And the reason why they stopped giving is because, one, they can't see what they are delivering in terms of how they are supporting the community beyond their year-end accounts, and two, they don't feel like like when you, as a charity, when you engage with your donors, you want to write to the donor like them. You want to tell them your story. You want to send them to your website. You want to see how their dollar or pound is impacting lives. You want to tell that story. And I think Power BI gives you that opportunity, because I think with by having that opportunity using Power BI, you can actually engage well with them. You can tell your story. You can tell them whatever you want to tell, and it's really amazing how with that younger generations, you can actually engage better with them using Power BI. I think it's because with Power BI, you can bring all your contacts in, you can bring all your engagement, you can see You can tell your story. You can let them, because of the transparency that comes with Power BI, you can tell your story with your data. I mean, I know, as I say, I don't know if I've said this to you before, Avi. I know a client that have literally plugged their Power BI to their website, and they've made it sort of interactive, and they've literally taken it to another level and making it interactive where you can click and see how the money has been spent. Now that's a light that really gives wow.
Yeah. I mean, that is a wow. I'm thinking about the charities that I donate to, and some of them have, decent websites and decent information available on there. But yeah, if it was to that level, it was like, hey, here's how our money comes in. It's, again, the interactivity, I think, is just, it is that wow factor. And again, you talked about how people want to be kind of connected in the know, but want to feel part of it. And I know that would help me feel like that for the charities that I give to, where I could go and click and play around with the Power BI. Oh, this is what they're doing. This is what's new, and so forth. But I feel like we might be just scratching the surface, because that with maybe some of the other digital technologies, I don't know, Power Flow or something. Imagine if a donor could get like a personalized, almost customized report, maybe for my specific region or region that I care about, a region that if I donated to, like, I mean, if I said, oh, I want my funds to go to this area, then maybe I get a specific personalized report. Yeah, right. So it could be taken to a whole other level.
Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, absolutely. I think that will be really amazing. I mean, there's a particular charity that I sort of work with, where when they do some fundraising, I mean, their fundraising is quite complex in the sense that when people give specifically, for a specific region, I mean, they might be, the charity is involved in several projects and programs across the world. Now, for each of those programs, some people give specifically to say, I'm giving here and I want this money spent there. And there's, it's got to be traced around about where the money is gone, where the money is gone, to how the money has been spent.
Yeah.
And obviously that involves quite a few data sources. And I think that's really quite powerful. Being able to pull it all together, it's really powerful. I think for them, they do that for their, I mean, the board do that now, and they sort of, they're able to kind of tell that story. But I think that's a real good point, Avi, to be able to, be able to plug that where they can have that customized experience. And I think that's really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought long and hard about, again, we've had these conversations, right? So where I think like, hey, nonprofit is like a business. So I've tried to draw the parallels, and sometimes I think of donor as customers. Like, how much are they investing, right? I mean, are they coming back? Are they buying from us again? Things like that. And of course, I can see that, and of course, I've seen in the past as well, where the team or the they would have, at least for their big customers, so in nonprofits case, big donors, at least have a customized report for them. And again, not have to kill yourself and spend a week or a month try to put it together. Just have it be ready, click of a button. So that could be pretty amazing. But you touched on something there, and I'm going to go back to that a little bit, which is the complexity in a nonprofit. And certainly I've come to appreciate that, just by learning from you, which is, a large nonprofit these days, it can have these multiple entities spread across different countries, and there's always financial regulations and how the money kind of moves across and so forth. That is quite a challenge, but you've seen Power BI can help bring things together, can stitch it up together and optimize that.
Absolutely. I think that's what, I mean, that's, I could not use anything else that will make it. I mean, sometimes just thinking about it is quite complex. So you've got, I mean, I think the biggest I've worked with is the one that's got about 23 funds.
Wow.
They've got 23 different funds. So what that means is that under UK laws, for those sort of funds, it means that whoever gives into those funds, that fund can only be used for the specific purpose it's been set up for. You can't, legally, you can't take money out of that fund to fund something else. It has to be spent there. And so, as I say, it's almost like having 23 P&L accounts and balance sheets. And I think the complexity of transactions and being able to see it clearly, as well as being able to go to that level of details, I can't see anything else apart from using Power BI. I'm struggling. I can't even remember the days what we did before.
Oh, that is,
It's so long gone by.
that's
I'm
a
not sure
great
if I
feeling.
ever
Yeah.
think about it.
Hey, I'll say the same. I mean, you do kind of get used to this new stuff. And I talk about living in the Power BI bubble. Now, I feel lucky that my bubble is often poked because I'm working with people who are on the beginner journey, right? Who are starting out. And I see them struggle. I see them do it the old way. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what I used to do. I'd forgotten about that, where distinct count used to be such a challenge. There were like 3 different ways I would do that in Excel. None were perfect, and now you get, so yeah, it's good to have that reminder. But what you were just saying kind of had me thinking about Simon Sinek again, and how he talks about, he often uses analogies involving military, armed forces, Marines. And it's odd because he's a business teacher, right? His background is marketing. He's always talking to businesses, but he's using those analogies. And what he said was that it's because, well, the dynamics are the same. So he often talks about team building, motivation and stuff, but the stakes are higher. I mean, stakes are in one way, life or death there, right? So it amplifies everything, makes it easier to study. And I'm thinking about nonprofit, and again, that dialogue in my head, like, is it like a business? Well, it is, but I feel like it's a similar dynamic where the stakes are higher. And what you talked about, that all of this effort in Power BI to kind of optimize operations, in a way, it's the stakes are higher because you're serving a bigger purpose. And I'm going to read it out. I wrote this down when I heard you last speaking at a conference, and it was so beautiful, which really exemplifies what we're talking about here. And you said, stakes are higher because every dollar saved or raised is a dollar that can go towards their mission, go towards impacting that one life. So, well, first of all, man, thank you for serving this niche. I want to hear a bit about that. Why choose this specific niche, faith-based nonprofit? Certainly, I mean, I can't imagine like anybody going to school or when they were younger, it's like, oh, what do you want to be? I want to be an astronaut. I want to be this. I can't imagine anybody saying, oh, I want to serve faith-based nonprofits, but I don't know, maybe it was you. So tell me a bit about that story. How did you end up here?
Well, I do really love working with nonprofit. I think mainly because, I grew up with faith in God, and, my life has been impacted by that. So this is why it's so important to me to kind of, use my skills to help nonprofits, make an impact in the communities and across the globe, because there are quite a lot of me out there.
Wow.
That could be nurtured to do great things.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the path I've taken in life and where I'm at today has been linked directly to my faith and to all the journeys I've taken, and I feel like this is the only way I know how to give back, which is kind of why I've kind of focused on this niche. And so it really brings joy to me when the work I do, I can see it making an impact. And so it just brings the light up. That's what I get out of bed for, really.
Love that. So your life was personally impacted. If that support wasn't there in your life, where would you be?
I don't know. I probably wouldn't be where I am now, because it gave me the grounding to pull me out of scenarios where, things could have gone sideways or my life wouldn't have turned out this way. So I feel I owe it all to that, to my faith. I really do. I can't. I mean, there are so many scenarios where things could have gone so wrong, but I think my grounding in that, and the fact that I was shaped and helped by that, made a big difference in, my life story. So I think it's it's hard to think about where I would have been, but I know it wouldn't be anywhere good. So I just feel my life has been impacted by that, and every decisions I have made and have not made has been directly linked to that.
Wow. That's phenomenal, man. I mean, that's certainly an example to look up to. I mean, I remember something that you said in one of our earlier conversations, and where you talked about how your life could have gone the wrong way, and now you're just here to help others, to help them from going the wrong way. And when you said that, I immediately thought of my life, and I'm like, man, it could have, yeah, I think I don't know, through our childhood, through our youth, through coming of age, we go through so many moments like that. And I know that's true for me, but perhaps it's true for everybody, right? I mean, there are always so many ways you can go wrong, and your life could just take a different turn. And if there's just a little bit of support, just a little bit of help, goes such a long way.
Absolutely.
Love it. So let me ask you a different question. So right now I feel you're so aligned when talking to you. I feel that energy. You're aligned with like who you are, is what your work is who you are serving. And I know a little bit of that feeling, and it feels incredible. Was there a time when it wasn't the case? Like I'm just curious. I'm imagining an Andrew kind of stuck in a cubicle doing, again, sometimes you can be outwardly, you can be doing the same work,
gosh.
right? I mean, you're doing finance stuff, but inside you feel so hollow and empty. Was there a time like that when it wasn't aligned and it felt different?
Well, yeah, well, yes, there have been times. I think for me, as you know, as I say, I've kind of worked in slightly different industries. So I've worked in the construction industry for a bit. I've also worked in healthcare, and I think for me, there's been that earning. I've had that black moment. I said, I wish I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really possible? And obviously, I got into it, and then also obviously being able to add value and help, but then seeing this real itch that I can see is happening across each of these organizations. I'm thinking, what is stopping them to achieving this? And what will be that little push?
Yeah.
And the ability to see that little bit I can give is able to impact life. For me, that is just,
wow.
I mean, that is a big reward for me, really.
Wow. Love that. So there's something that you said, I want to take you back, which is when you were considering that switch. And I know that moment, and of course I've experienced that myself, and of course I see that in my followers or members where they're trying to kind of leave their 9-to-5 job behind or something else, or niche down, focus on the niche. There must have been some fear there, right? That not good enoughness, not readiness, that what tell me a bit about that, and maybe what helped you over that.
So I think there's always this, what I would call like the imposter syndrome, where, hang on a minute, there are a lot of Power BI folks out there that are doing, why do you think, you can do any better?
Who am I? Yeah.
Who am I? Absolutely. And I think you're right. Obviously, having conversations with you, and obviously the past we've already talked about around some of the things around being able to conquer those fears. As you say, it doesn't go away. It's always there. But I think being able to understand that it is there, and I think also one of the things that I am obviously coming to your cause and obviously having that conversation with you is about, actually, it's not about being a Power BI consultant or developer or whatever it is. Yeah. It's about solving problems using Power BI. And whilst you might not have all the technical skills and experience, solving the problem will give you those skills. I think don't try and learn it first, and then you need to solve the problem and then learn it as you go along.
Always so much better.
So yes, that fear of I think that's your inner saboteur, and I think it's a human instinct about flight or fear, and being able to how to recognize that, and I think it's your ability to recognize that, obviously. And thanks, Avi. Obviously, there's a lot of help that came from your end, because I've always had that, and I think it was interesting just being able to, I see what this is. the reality is that it would never go away. But I think the fact that you recognize that it's there, and you say, right, go back to your box, and then you have your strategies to deal with it. But by caging yourself that way, you're not able to serve. There are a lot of people out there that need, people that can help them solve their problems. So you're doing not just yourself a favor, but you're also not able to serve your client by having those thoughts. Because the reality is that everybody's unique. Everybody is being giving a specific gift, and there's not enough of us in the world to do it. So there are people crying out there that need help.
Exactly. And only you can help them. Only Andrew, Ali, right? I mean, you forget to realize that. We always say, oh, it's somebody, right? Imagine there's somebody drowning, right? And everybody's standing on the beach, but everybody's going, oh yeah, I'm sure there's a better swimmer out there. Bloody hell, swim out there, right? And that person, who knows? I mean, maybe you're meant to save them. And so that's so true.
And somebody did mention saying, I read, it said, you cannot outperform your self-image, what you think about yourself. And I think having this, being able to be a success in what you do, not just the technical skills are the easy part, getting the clients is the easy part. I think it's yourself. You need to Absolutely. You need to deal with that battle with yourself.
Oh, trust me. I mean, I always say that all of my external breakthroughs, the things that people see, the YouTube channel taking off, the business taking off and stuff, they've all been preceded by inner breakthroughs, what I had to slay that demon, of doubt and saboteur. But I'll say, I mean, I often talk to people, and of course, hearing from you as well, that fear is always there. And I think that's a primal part of it. So we shouldn't try to suppress it or make it go away. It never really goes away. But sometimes, sometimes what I say to people is that, and try to say to myself as well, is that okay to have that fear, but there is a bigger fear in my life, a really big fear, which for me, somehow turning 40 was the turning point when I started getting afraid of this thing. And that big fear of mine is a life unlived, right? Where I go to my later years, whatever, 60s, 80s, deathbed, whatever it is, right? And then I look back and there's regret. Oh man, I wish I should have taken a chance, taken a shot at living my dream or living my life or being my authentic self or being in alignment, whatever that is, right? I mean, that became my big fear. And I don't want to go through life and look back and say, oh, I didn't do that. So, hey, let's bring it to close. And what I want to ask you in closing is that even inspired by this big mission, big purpose, which has had a big impact in your life, as you go through this journey, both the technical aspects and the business aspects, there are always ups and downs. There are always days where you almost feel shattered at times, where you feel like, what the heck am I doing? It was a mistake. I should just go back, crawl back into my box, as you said, right? So there are days like that. What has helped you?
I think I'll probably answer you before you said. I would say the community. I mean, there are times where I've hit a brick wall, and our Power BI community has been amazing. I, just reach out to just either been able to just rant up somebody, and somebody just picks up the phone. I can get Greg on the phone, which is say, oh yeah, Andrew, what's up? Or get Ian on the phone, and he's able to share his strategic views on things. It's amazing. It's like, I think for me, I think the key is really the community. I think that's the value add. I think it's being able to go on this journey along with similar-minded folks. I think it's a really powerful combination. I think it's really the key. I think we all need it. Surely, I think just sometimes. I remember there was a time I had a chat with I was going through. I sort of hit a brick wall on something I was working through, and I just gave a holler to Ian, and Ian came on the phone and we just chatted through. And actually, just chatting through some stuff with him, I managed to resolve it, and I got another idea, and it was just amazing.
Oh, that's so true. So, that's a great note to end things on, because I'll share my bit here, which is often when I was in the 9 to 5 and I looked at this side of the fence, I mean, the grass did look greener, but I had a very different view. You imagine like freedom and all that stuff. And somehow this image of working at the beach, with a drink in hand and laptop, right? But what's wrong about that image is that I was always alone, right? I mean, there's nobody around me. And I've realized that that's not what I want or need. I want to be independent. I want my freedom. I want that independence, but I don't want to be alone, right? So I don't want to be, and yeah, so I've certainly enjoyed that aspect too, having our community around and so forth. Andrew, thanks so much for this today. And I always learn something new, a new insight when I talk to you. And I'm glad I also get to be able to share it with others. Thank you so much.
Oh, you too, Avi. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey folks, I'm sure you loved this conversation with Andrew. Now, there were so many aha moments. You heard how excited I got during our chat. But the biggest aha moment for me was when he spoke of risk. And he spoke of downside risk and upside risk. Risk that you would fail, but risk that you could be wildly successful. And it reminded me of a conversation we had in our live Power BI career Q&A call that we host, where someone talked about how they were eager to step into consulting, but really afraid that what if they ran into a nightmare client. Now, we talked about that, and then the first thing we did was we played out the scenario. Well, what if you end up working with a nightmare client? And we talked about the scenario, and really the short version of that was, well, you could say goodbye to them. And that's frankly the best part of being an independent consultant. You get to choose who you work with. So yes, you can fire your clients. Certainly you should fire your nightmare clients, because by saying no to them, you're saying yes to your ideal clients. But the other part that we talked about was that how this person was really focused on the worst case scenario, right? Really obsessed with that and letting that hold them back. But they were not thinking about the best case scenario. Now, hey, even if you're talking about numbers and statistics and probability, the probability for the worst case scenario is the same as the probability for the best case scenario. But again, we focus so much on this one, the worst case, everything going wrong, but we don't think about the upside risk. What if everything was wildly successful? I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Marianne Williamson. And she says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear that we are powerful beyond measure." This is the Power On Podcast. I'm your host, Avi Singh. Carl Taladua is our executive editor. Make sure to share this podcast with your loved ones, and we'll meet again in the next episode. Until then, Power On.